Alright, welcome back. It is the JFK Assassination Audit number 29. It's the 21st of December, and only 4 more days left till Christmas. We're going to get into this, see what we have here. So now, I've kind of come up with a format that I'm going to do, try to stick to. I'm going to do the timeline for about the first 19 minutes, and we're going to go, by time on the day of the assassination and beyond. And then for the next 19 minutes, I'm going to do new research or new documents that I've come across. I'm still every day reading through all these new documents that have just been released, and so anything that comes out that sounds interesting or relevant or a shocker, I'm going to start going over that. And then a new section, which is kind of part of the what I've been doing with Des Moines Shield, called Personalities. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Des Moines Shield, and we're going to go over everyone who is associated with the Des Moines Shield, and then we're going to go over everyone that's associated with those people that are associated with the Des Moines Shield, and then everyone that's associated with those people that are associated with people that are associated with Des Moines Shield. And so we're going to show you connections here and find out more, a little bit in depth about these people. A lot of these people are going to come across in the timeline, but I want to get ahead on that. And then we're going to go back into this video of Des Moines Shield, and then after we finish with the video of Des Moines Shield, we'll do another really long video about a personality that I find. But I think that's a good format to stick to, and eventually we'll get into just doing just mainly the timeline. But this is a good way, instead of going through the boring, reading testimony and stuff like that. But anyway, so in the timeline where we left off, and where I got down this rabbit hole about the weapon, Oswald was observed by Frazier getting out of the truck, carrying the 2-foot package, the paper sack, into the Texas School Book Depository building. And the only other person to see Oswald is Jack Edwin Daughtry as he's entering the building that morning, but he doesn't recall him carrying anything. Now that could depend on the angle that he's seeing it, because Oswald's carrying it in his left arm and holding it under his arm and his body. If Daughtry's on the right of him, you're probably not going to see the package. But we'll see. We're going to read through his testimony, see what he says. I haven't read it yet, so we'll see if there's anything relevant here, okay? Alright, so just instantly getting off into the testimony here of Jack Edwin Daughtry. He's not a young guy, he's about 40 years old, but first thing I notice is that he says his address, 1827 South Marseilles. And if you look at that, that's just south of where Ruby's living. So he's literally within 1.3 miles south of Ruby. He probably would have had to pass Ruby on his way to work every day. Alright, so we'll go into more here. So he says here he was in the Army. He got out. How he was able to do that. Anyway, he got out in 1940. 1940 when he started to work. 1940 what? So I'm a little confused. It seems like he was in the military but started working at Texas School Book Depository in 1940. And then there's something about 1952 here. Anyway, I'm not sure exactly what that means. But it says he's a shipping clerk. So he's going to be on the back of the shipping dock there, okay? And let's see what else it says. And here you go. It said, did you know a fellow by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald that worked at the Texas School Book Depository? Well, I'll be frank with you, Mr. Ball. I don't believe nobody knew him too well. You might say he wouldn't have too much to say to anybody. He just stayed all by to himself. And I'll be frank with you, I just flat didn't know him. So there's two things there. Okay? First of all, if you've got a guy who's been arrested for murder, especially murdering the President of the United States, and he's working at where you're working at, you know, most people are going to be like Mr. Ball here. They're going to be defensive. Oh no, I didn't know the guy at all. I had no idea. No, I don't know that guy. Like that. No matter what kind of relationship they have with, which I believe. But also, it tells you something about Lee Oswald. So we've got, you know, what would you call it? Not paradise, but utopia socialist Oswald that talks to liaison fair George de Mohrenschildt and says that Oswald is harmless, he's an idealist, and couldn't hurt a flea, and never advocated or tried to change, you know, tried to get him to convert to communism. Then we've got advocate Oswald passing out handbills, getting into street fights, going on to radio shows and television shows and having debates about capitalism, communism, Cuba. Then we've got, you know, nice Oswald, kept to himself, loved children, and talked about the weather with Wesley Frazier. And then we've also got, along with that, you know, what is he saying here? Nobody knew Oswald too well. He mainly stayed to himself. Okay? So it's been, you know, it's only been a month and a half, but still, even after a month and a half, you think Oswald would be talking to people. And again, if Oswald is the violent revolutionary that people are saying, okay, alright, there you go. Okay, and did you know a fellow named Lee Oswald? And he went over that, you know, didn't know anyone that well. He didn't know him very well. But also, you got to figure, like I was saying about the Warren Commission, they try to paint him as this, you know, violent Marxist advocate revolutionary, but yet he says nothing to anyone, to none of the workers, nothing like that about Marxism. He's reading all these books, but does and says nothing to them. At least there, in New Orleans, he's out on the street fighting with people and stuff about that. Very strange, don't you think? Anyway, it says now, on November 22nd, 1963, that's the day the president was shot. Yes, sir. What time did you get to work? Well, I got there, it was after 7 o'clock in the morning. Usually get there in the morning around 7 o'clock. Yes. Why do you get there at 7 instead of 8 when the rest of the men get there? Well, you might say, I have a little extra chores to do. You do that, you get there at 7 all the time, don't you? Yes. I've been doing it for 11 years. So, for 11 years, okay, that's what it is. 1952, he started working there at the school book depository. So for 11 years, he's been seeing people come to that back door there. Anyway, that's what Mr. Truly told me, that you get in real early, yes. And you get there about 7 in that morning. Let's see, Mrs. Doherty, you said that you have some extra chores. What are those extra chores? I have to see if the water system is pumped up. In other words, the air pressure is up to 40 pounds. The ADT system runs the alarm system, and we immediately call Mr. Truly, of course, and they call me. What is the ADT? It's an alarm system, basically. Yes, is that a fire alarm system? Yes. You can call it that. Alright, we'll just drop down here. What time do you usually go to lunch? Well, usually around 12 o'clock or 12 noon. Do you carry your lunch most of the time from home? Yes. And where do you usually eat your lunch? Well, we have they have got what you call a domino room in there, and I usually eat in there. Now, the domino room is at the northeast corner of the first floor, which is where the dock is, where he's talking about. And you usually eat your lunch in the domino room? Yes. And how long do you take for lunch? From 12 to 12:45. 45 minutes? Yes. Do you always take a full hour? Yes, I usually do. Now, do you remember the day of the 22nd, 1963? You do, don't you? Yes. The day that the president was shot? Yes. Do you remember what time you went to work that day? Do you remember what time you went to work that day? Yes, let's see. It was 12:30. What time did you go to work that morning? Well, that particular morning, let's see. We'd go back. No, I mean, wow, this is confusing. It was 8 o'clock when we actually started work. What time did you get to the building? At 6:45. 6:45. Wow, this is all over the place. You told the officers you got there around 7 o'clock. Well, I mean inside the building. Inside the building? Yes. When I got inside the building, it was 7 o'clock. You parked your car. I don't have a car. I ride the bus. Did you see Oslo come to work that morning? Yes. When he first came, coming to the door, when he came in the door, yes. Did you see him come in the door? Yes. I saw him when he first came in the door, yes. Did he have anything in his hands or arms? Well, not that I could see of. About what time was that? That was 8 o'clock. That was 8 o'clock, yes, sir. What door did he come in? Well, he came in the back door. Where were you then? I was sitting on top of the wrapping table. Now, do you remember that you gave a statement to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and to a man by the name of Ellington or a Mr. Anderson the day of the 23rd? Yes. I talked to so many of them, it's kind of hard to remember. And there was a statement that they took when they talked to you, and then that you called vaguely, having seen Oslo when he came in to work at 8 a.m. today. I did that morning. That seems to be dated the 22nd day of November 1963. That's right. The full statement is, I am employed by the Texas School Book Depository, 411 Elm Street, Dallas, as an order filler, reside at 1827 South Marcellus Street. And did you tell them that? Hold on one second. Okay, and this is his sworn statement here. It says, I am employed at the Texas School Book Depository at 411 Elm and have been since 1952. I was working on the 6th floor today. Wow, interesting. There were 6 of us working on the floor. The others were Billy Lovelady, William Shelby, Danny R.C., Bonnie Williams, and Charles Givens. I went back to work at 12:45. I had already gone back to work, and I had gone down the 5th to get some stock, and I heard a shot. It sounded like it was coming from inside the building, but I couldn't tell from where. I went down the first floor and asked a man named Eddie Piper if he had seen anything, and he said yes, that he had heard 3 shots. I then went back up to the 6th floor. I didn't see anyone on the floor except the people named. There was another employee that is named Lee Harvey Oslo that I saw on the 6th floor. He works all over the building, but I saw him on the 6th floor shortly before noon. I didn't see Oswald in the building after lunch. Now that's a very confusing statement. Okay, because so he's saying that he's working on the 6th floor with these people. I'm taking it that's the morning. And then I guess he had lunch from 12 to 12:45. And then he went down to the 5th floor at 12:45 is what he's saying here to get some stock. And he heard what he thought was some shots. And he went down to the 1st floor, and a man named Eddie Piper said that it was 3 shots. And then he went back to the 6th floor and didn't see anyone on the floor except the people he just named, which is very unusual because Billy Loveladies and William Shelby, all these people were standing out front. So he also says he saw Oswald on the 6th floor at 12:45. I don't know, this guy seems to be all over the place, so highly unreliable. because everyone else is standing out front, but he's saying you're seeing him on the 6th floor at 12:45. Anyway, we'll keep going. Let's see. Did he come in with anybody? No. He was alone. Yes, he was alone. Do you recall him have anything in his hand? Well, I didn't see anything if he did. Did you pay enough attention to him, you think, that you would remember whether he did or didn't? Well, I believe I can. Yes, sir. I'll put it this way. I didn't see anything in his hands at the time. In other words, your memory is definite on that, is it? Yes, sir. In other words, you would say positively he had nothing in his hands. I would say yes, sir. Or are you guessing? I don't think so. I'm guessing I'm not guessing. Oh, wow. This is a totally unreliable witness here. You saw him come in the door. Yes, the back door, the 1st floor. It was the back door. Now, the back door is the door that opens onto what? The back door would be the 1st floor? Yes. And it opens where? On the back deck. On the back dock side over there. That would be the direction. The 1st floor, what wall of the 1st floor? North? Well, let's see. To be frank with you, I don't know which one it would be. It would be north. Is there only one back door? Yes. There's only one back door. Did you see him again that morning? Yes. Just one more time. Where was that? On the 6th floor. On the 6th floor? Yes. About what time of day of that? About what time of day? It was around 11 o'clock. That was the last time I saw him. Although in his statement he just said he saw Oswald at 12:45. Anyway, what was he doing there? Well, as far as I could tell, he was getting some stock as far as I could tell. What were you doing there? I was getting some stock also. And there were some workmen up there at the time, not that I know of. Wow. Okay. Well, do you remember Shelley, Dan R.C., Bonnie Williams, Billy Lovelady, and Charles Gibbons who were working up there that morning laying on the 6th floor? Oh, yes. They were laying the floor. Yes, sir. Wow. This guy is only 40 years old, okay? Oh, yes, they were laying the floor. Yes, sir. And were you there at the time, and were they there at the time you were there? Oh, yes, sir. They were here. They were there. Yes, sir. Is the same time you saw Oswald? Yes, sir. Just about that time. And how long were you on the 6th floor? Well, just long enough to get some stock. Where did you go then? I went to the 5th floor. What did you do then? Well, I went to the 5th floor to get some stock, also on the 5th floor. Then what did you do? Then, just about that time, I thought I heard, wait a minute, did you go to lunch? Well, I went back upstairs, downstairs to eat lunch. Yes, sir. What time? Oh, it was 12 o'clock. Wow, this guy's totally unreliable. When you talk to the FBI men, I got a statement here dated 19 December, a statement from Agent William O. Johnson, and he reports that you told him you saw Lee Harvey Oswald approximately 8 a.m. when Oswald arrived. That's right. That you saw him again at 11 a.m. on the 6th floor. That's right. But you didn't see him again after that. Is that your testimony? Yes. Is that the truth? Yes. Or that's right. And it also says, this report that Mr. Johnson states, that you told him that just prior to 12:45 or 12 noon, you and 5 other men were working on the 6th floor. Were you? Yes, we were working on the 6th floor. What were you doing? Well, I was getting some stock off the 6th floor. You weren't helping the men lay the floor? No, sir. Did you go down to lunch? Yes. To what floor? The 1st floor. How did you get down there? Well, use the elevator. Did you go down alone or with someone? I went down alone. Where did you eat your lunch? In the domino room. Now, what time did you go back to work? At 12:30. And he just said 12:45. Good Lord, this guy is completely unreliable. It even also says he always goes to lunch from 12 to 12:45. Did you know that the president was going to pass in the motorcade that noon? Well, they said something about it. Did you intend to go out and watch him? Well, I would have loved to have went out and watched him, but the steps were so crowded. There was no way in the world I could get out there. Did you take a look at it? Did you go out and take a look
or didn't you? Well, no, sir. Okay, how can you see from the Domino's room when you're eating a lunch all the way to the front of the Elm Street there? This guy, oh my God. Anyway, well, no, sir. And see, this is where these guys are just completely inept at answering questions, okay? Anyway, well, no, sir. Now, you were on the first floor in the Domino room when you finished your lunch, didn't you? Yes, sir. And didn't you stay there a length of time after you finished your lunch? No, sir. Just a short length of time? Then, no, sir. Just a short length, okay, wait. Just a short length of time. Then, what did you do? Well, I went back to work. And where did you go to work? Let me see. Up on the 6th floor. Did you go to the 6th floor? Yes, sir. And what time? At about 12:40. It was 12:40. Had you heard any shots before that? Yes, I heard one. It sounded like a firecracker. Where were you when you heard the shot? I was on the 5th floor. Now, he was on the first floor. Now he's on the 5th floor. You were on the 5th floor? Yes, sir. Now, when you left your lunch, did you go to the 5th floor or the 6th floor to go back to work? Well, I went to the 5th floor when I was getting ready to go. I went on the 5th floor when I was getting ready to go down to eat my lunch. Yes. And then what happened? Well, at that time, I was about 10 feet away. Wait a minute. Did you hear the shots before or after you had lunch? Well, before I ate my lunch. Oh, my God. Oh, lordy, 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 lordy. God almighty, this guy is like all over the fucking place. Anyway, we're going to stop right there, and I'm going to pick up on the next section here. That's just too much. Anyway. Okay. Alright, so wow, that was just too much, because the guy was all over the place, saying he went to lunch at 12, and he stopped at 12:30, and he stopped at 12:45, and then he was in the Domino room, and then, at 12:30, and then he was on the 5th floor, and he was on the 6th floor, and at 12:45 he saw Oswald and Shelley and all these other guys up there. That's just too much. Anyway, so this section here is going to be about new research, new documents, new video I've come across, and I think that's interesting. So we're going to play this, and then we'll move on. But wow, my head's still spinning after that. Just reading. I wasn't even in the commission room. I was just reading the transcript, and my head's still spinning. All right, here we go.
Just a few minutes ago, the President of the United States turned from Houston Street onto Elm Street on his way to a scheduled luncheon appearance at the Stemmons Trade Mart. And as he went by the Texas School Book Depository, headed for the Triple Underpass, there were 3 loud, reverberating explosions. Nobody moved. Everyone seemed stunned. A few seemed to look around, wondering who has the firecrackers. Then suddenly the Secret Service men sprang into action. The convertible bearing the President and Mrs. Kennedy sped away, and officers, both plainclothes and uniformed, seemed to spring from everywhere at once, guns drawn, ordering people to lie flat. There are 2 witnesses who were near the President at the time of the explosions, who say that shots were fired, from which upper window we do not know. We do not and cannot confirm the reports at this time that the President has been shot. One witness says he definitely was shot, that he was hit twice, that he saw the President slump in his seat. As I say, this is not confirmed at this time. From where I am, the police have 2 witnesses. They are bringing them in now. I'm in the Texas School Book Depository building. They're bringing some witnesses in now. We will try to learn further and relay word to this station.
Wow.
Behind some trees on a sort of service road is a brick building of about 8 stories, which is called the Texas School Book Depository. Now, according to witnesses, two of them who I talked to and the police talked to, say they saw a man with a gun in the, one said the second floor, another one said the fourth floor, a window of that building. Now, from either floor, Frank, he would be able to see over the low trees to about 100 yards away where the president's car was.
An unobstructed view, Bob?
I was not able to go up to either of those windows, so I couldn't see for myself, but looking at it from the ground, it looked as though it would be. The president, therefore, must have had presented either a profile to the assailant, if he was, in fact, in those windows where the witnesses say, and or his three-quarters back, because his car had actually passed the direct line from the window. You see, the way it went is the car would have approached the window head-on, then turned left and gone down a slight decline under the underpass. Just a moment, Frank.
Yes, Bob.
You notice how the majority of people being arrested are people of color, African Americans, Hispanic guys. So this is another reason why they wouldn't have used the Cubans, okay, for the shooters, because they would have been an obvious target to have been arrested, because the racist Dallas cops, you know. But if you're a white guy, you're more likely to get a pass. But anyway, here we go. Meanwhile, you got all these white people standing around, but only the guys that are African American and Hispanics are getting arrested.
Newsman Mel Couch said he was riding shortly behind the president in the parade. He said after the shots were fired, he happened to look up at about the 5th or 6th floor of the Texas Book Depository. He said he saw the rifle being pulled back in.
Down page KBOX Mobile News Unit number 4 here at the Texas School Book Depository, where the area being completely roped off by Dallas police.
There's a white guy being arrested.
At the scene. I don't know what for, but a fire truck is standing by. Most of the officers, literally hundreds of them, armed with sawed-off shotguns, pump shotguns, automatic shotguns, and submachine guns.
We have this further information. Police now say that President Kennedy was assassinated by a shot from a warehouse, so that if this has been confirmed, then that rules out the grassy knoll near the street on which the motorcade passed. The entire building has now been evacuated. And Dallas police say that they have found the remains of fried chicken and paper on the 5th floor. They say the sniper apparently had been there for some time. The Secret Service said the assassin apparently used a high-powered Army or Japanese rifle of approximately .25 caliber. They said the rifle had a scope on it. Where this information comes from, we do not know. We earlier had reports it was a .30-30 rifle. But the Dallas police are being quoted now as saying that the rifle was of Japanese make, of high power, and approximately .25 caliber with a scope on it, and remains of fried chicken.
So you see how this works, okay? Especially back in those days, they're not as, fact-checking as they are nowadays. But back then, they're trying to get a jump on the other stations on news, so more people will watch them, say, hey, they got more information than this other station. And same thing with radio reports. So in order to get a jump on the news and on your competition, you're going to give information that the other ones don't get. And sometimes that information hasn't been thoroughly vetted and may not be actually correct. That's why you have these, reports come out in the beginning that turn out later on to be incorrect.
And the paper have been found on the 5th floor of a warehouse along the presidential route, and from which the bullets apparently were fired. That's the Dallas police with that information.
They wouldn't let us out of the Texas School Book Depository building. As the president turned the corner,
And then also, do you see that guy? Highly contaminating the evidence with the cigarette smoke or cigar smoke, whatever that is. And also, you're going to have nitrates in that cigarette, so that can just be floating around. And whatever you touch, you're touching your hands, and whatever you're touching is going to be contaminated with nitrates. So if you don't wash your hands, and then you grab Oswald and do a nitrate test, if this guy's doing a nitrate test and he just touched his cigarettes, you're going to contaminate that nitrate test and give a false positive.
As the president turned the corner, we were standing there and broke into applause. As he came around, it's funny because we were remarking among ourselves. Terry Ford of Radio Promotion was with me, and we were looking up at the open windows of the Texas School Book Depository building and at all that open space, and wondering just how in the world they had already covered all this, and wondering where the Secret Service men were. And right after Mr. Kennedy passed in front of me, I heard one big explosion, and my immediate thought was,
again, remember I was talking a few videos back about the layer of protection being removed. Okay, so the Secret Service, the bubble top's off, no one's checking the windows ahead of time. The sheriff had told the police or his deputies not in any way to assist in, the crowd control or anything like that. And then the motorcycle escorts have been brought back, the Secret Service agents have been brought back. So you're basically, and you don't really need a lot of people to do that. You only need one. Okay? You just need one guy in charge of everyone to say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then you've opened the president up when he moves into that kill zone to fire from all kinds of directions. Okay? And then with the way the concrete in the plaza operates, it reflects the sound. It's confusion. You don't know where the shots are coming from. So it's an ideal situation, and even the news media guys picking up on that. Hey, how did they check out all these damn windows that are open? Even the stupid news media guy is going to figure out that's something not right there.
Like I think most of the people standing around there.
So what I'm saying basically is, if you take the information from numerous sources, okay, you can easily see from those people how, when you put it together, it was definitely a conspiracy that happened to the president, because you get one person says one thing, another person says another piece of information, another person says another piece of information. If you take it individually and not put it against the other information, it doesn't mean anything. But once you put it all together, like a puzzle piece, onto the puzzle, it becomes really clear what happened.
This is firecrackers, but it's a pretty poor taste. I looked and saw the president, I thought, duck. Evidently he was slumping at the time. The car immediately sped on. No one seemed galvanized into immediate action. The shots didn't seem rapid at all. They were three well-spaced or reverberating shots.
How far were you from the car, Pierce, when the shots were fired?
The car was in the middle of the street, and I was on the left-hand side of the street. I'd say about 10 feet.
And it didn't stop?
No, the car kept going. The car did not stop. The policeman immediately came over and said, all right, hit the dirt. And everyone concerned scrambled right away, including this young man, the young man with the two children, Bill Newman, whom I talked to right after it happened.
Now we would like to get the late developments in Washington by returning to Washington and David Brinkley.
Well, this one is not from Washington, Frank, but the Dallas police reported a moment ago that a foreign-made rifle believed to have been used in the shooting of the president had no fingerprints on it. It has been sent here to the FBI laboratory in Washington for an analysis.
So did you get that? The Dallas police says there's no fingerprints on the entire rifle. Okay? How can Oswald fire that damn gun and not leave any fucking fingerprints? It doesn't make any sense. I remember I showed you how all those places that your fingers are going to be in that groove on the stock. It's going to be in the telescope while he's adjusting it. It's going to be on the trigger guard. It's going to be on the trigger. The thumbprint's going to be on the back part of the stock. It's just impossible to fire that rifle and not leave some kind of fingerprint anywhere on that rifle.
Dallas Crime Laboratory Lieutenant J.C. Day went to the building a short time after the shooting took place, and he walked out with a British 303 rifle. The rifle has a telescopic sight. Now, the rifle was found on the sixth floor of the building near a corner window. Also, police searching that area found 3 empty 303 cartridge cases, also strapped with chicken, as if the person could have been there for some time. There were boxes of books, textbooks, and other...
To Elm Street, whenever we heard the...
You see, so what happens, okay, is that news media people, they develop sources within a police department, usually the chief investigator or maybe a deputy investigator underneath them, okay? And so what they'll do is, especially a situation like this, they're calling their number. You know, nowadays they'd be calling them on a cell phone, or they're bumping into them on the street and saying, hey, what do you know? What do you have? And then the policemen, you know, they'll hear things, they'll see things, but they don't know everything. Like I said, they're going to know a portion here and a portion over there. And so then that, you know, in a desperation to be the first to get the story, or the elements of the story, that news media man's just going to report whatever he can get, because he's fighting for his job too. Because if he gets more, you know, info on that story than the other guy, they're going to remember that at the station. So that's why you have this misinformation that goes on. It's not an intentional, you know, let's deceive the public and spread disinformation. It's just people vying for the story. That's what the newsmen do. Sometimes they don't vet everything, and that's what happens.
The first shot, I thought it was a motorcycle backfired.
Jim Cheney. I understand that you were riding next to the president's car when the assassination took place.
I was riding on the right rear fender.
What happened?
Well, we had proceeded west on Elm Street at approximately 15 to 20 miles an hour. When we heard the first shot, I thought it was a motorcycle backfiring. And I looked back over to my left, and also President Kennedy looked back over his left shoulder. Then the...
Now see this guy right here? I'll show you. Alright, so this is the policeman talking right now. You see here, his face, he's turned to the left. The first shot has gone out, the Secret Service agents are looking back. Clint Hill's looking forward, the policeman looking at the president, and you see the president's arm has been raised up, he's been shot through the neck. His wife is holding his arm there. That's what he's talking about. I heard the shot, I looked to the left, and I saw the president had been shot. Anyway, so get back to this video here. Hold on one second.
The second shot came, I looked back just in time to see the president struck in the face by the second bullet.
So that's interesting. He's saying the second shot hit the president. Anyway, hold on one second. Alright, we're going to keep reading this article about Des Moines Shield from Mark Lane. And it says Des Moines Shield's debriefings by the CIA in 1957, the substance of which found its way into several widely disseminated CIA reports, flowed from Des Moines Shield's service in Yugoslavia. He entered the country under the cover of an employment contract with the ICA, which served regularly as a CIA front in the Eastern Europe. The CIA provided consultant status to Des Moines Shield, finding it an excellent cover. He obviously exceeded his authority, however, for he was fired on by Yugoslavian troops who, seeing him photographing and sketching military installations, believed he was involved in espionage activities. Well, most normal people would too. It says a branch of the U.S. government had conducted an investigation of Des Moines Shield before the ICA entered into a contract with him. That investigative report remains classified today, as does much of the intelligence data about Des Moines Shield. Des Moines Shield's career was consistent only in respect to his continued contact with various spy organizations, arrested as a German spy by the FBI for photographing and sketching the actions of the Coast Guard at Aranas Pass, Texas. He left the country and entered Mexico. 9 months later, he was expelled from Mexico by General Maximo Camacho, who suspected de Mohrenschildt of acts of espionage against the Mexican government. From his work for French intelligence in Texas, for the CIA in Yugoslavia, and his excellent working relationship with the FBI in Texas, de Mohrenschildt emerged as a man for all causes and all seasons. In 1960, de Mohrenschildt and his wife disappeared. They reemerged a year later in Guatemala City. At the time, the CIA was organizing the Bay of Pigs invasion. Shortly thereafter, de Mohrenschildt reported to the American Embassy in Panama. Gary Taylor, de Mohrenschildt's son-in-law, testified before the Warren Commission on March 29, 1964. He too was questioned by Jenner. Taylor said, "Well, the only thing that occurred to me was that, and I guess it was from the beginning, that if there was any assistance of plotters of the assassination, that it was, in my opinion, most probably the de Mohrenschildts." Taylor offered as one reason for the belief that de Mohrenschildt's close approximation to the Bay of Pigs invasion. He said that although de Mohrenschildt claimed to have walked all of South America, further information indicated to me that their trip extended only to a portion of South America where Cuban refugees were being trained and invade Cuba, and that this trip coincided and that they were in the area while all his training was going on, and so forth and so on. Anyway, it's just amazing to me how many people think that, you know, Guatemala, Panama, and Honduras and El Salvador are South America when they're actually North America. South America begins at Colombia and downward, but because it's in Latin America, people, and it's not, you know, in the United States, people assume that, you know, any place south of like Mexico is South America. Very interesting. But anyway, yet before Taylor could complete the sentence, Jenner interrupted to suggest the answer in a question. Do you conclude that there was an attempt to spy on the invasion preparation? But Jenner knew that the de Mohrenschildt had worked for the CIA and that he had reported back to the American Embassy in Panama after leaving Guatemala City at the time of the invasion. His question could have had no effect other than to take Taylor away from the point. In fact, each time Taylor attempted to explain why he thought de Mohrenschildt had been involved in the assassination, Jenner changed the subject. Taylor, they went to Guatemala where the invasion troops were being trained, or they were in Guatemala, were supposed to be on the walking trip and had taken up residence in an unoccupied home of some acquaintance there, and unbeknown to anyone. And when these acquaintances returned, Jenner, this was their trip during which you were married to their daughter? Let's see, Taylor, yes. You're basing this information on communications with them, conversations with your wife, conversations that occurred after that they returned? Yes. And to clarify it on the last point about them being in Guatemala, in conversations with Nancy Tilton. Let's see. Yes, I ask you about her. Who is Nancy Tilton? Apologists for the Warren Commission stated that the record does not reveal that de Mohrenschildt played a part in conspiring to assassinate. Well, they don't even answer that question. Who is Nancy Tilton? Hold on one second. So apparently Nancy Tilton is that Jenner is talking about in 1964 is the same woman, it looks like, according to this article, that de Mohrenschildt will be staying in her house and commit suicide in. 13 years later. Anyway, this is an interesting article here. It says, I knew exactly what Oswald was going to do. This was dated April 1st, 1977, so a couple of days after his suicide. At the time of his death, George de Mohrenschildt was trying to sell a book he had written claiming he was responsible for Lee Harvey Oswald's assassination of President Kennedy. The Washington Star reported yesterday the book, reportedly entitled I Am a Patsy, I'm a Patsy, in the possession of Pat S. Russell, de Mohrenschildt's Dallas attorney. The newspaper said it based its information on an interview with Dutch journalist William Oltmans, there he is again, who had been cultivating the Des Moines Shield as a news source and friend for the past 10 years. In early March, Oltman went to Washington to call on the House Committee assassination. At the time, the newspaper said Oltmans felt Des Moines Shield did not figure in the Kennedy slaying, but may have cooked it up with Oswald. But apparently Des Moines Shield confused the situation when he later told Oltmans he made up the story. The newspaper said, Oltmans said he told me in Europe, look, I'll be discharged at Bishop College in June. I'm 65. My wife ran away. They reportedly were divorced. I'm at the end of the line, and one day he came into my room and said, let's face it, I only made up the story about Oswald because everybody makes $1 million on the Kennedy assassination, and I haven't made anything. So now it's my turn. So now you know, and I know that. The FBI and the newspaper reported does not know what to make of Des Moines Shield's strange trip to Europe last month and of his apparent suicide. The newspaper also quoted an exchange took place between Oltman and Des Moines Shield at Bishop College, February 23rd. Des Moines Shield, how would it hit the media if it came out and said I felt responsible for the Oswald's behavior? There's a little map of his trip there. Let me see here. Hold on one second. On March 2nd, Des Moines Shield left Dallas and arrived in Amsterdam. The next day, he went to Oltman's Dutch television publishing officials. And on March 5th, Des Moines Shield and Oltmans drove to Brussels to meet a Soviet diplomat. Des Moines Shield disappeared that afternoon. Oltmans reported that the disappearance to the U.S. Embassy in Holland on March 7th. On March 10th, Oltmans checked Des Moines Shield's clothing into an Amsterdam bank. Des Moines Shield left Brussels on March 11th. He turned up at JFK in New York City on March 14th on a flight from London. He arrived in Malapan on March 17th. God, very weird. Anyway, it says here, let's see, suicide notes seized by assassination panel. A worn and battered brown leather briefcase found in the blood-splattered room where George Des Moines Shield shot himself to death Tuesday has, hold on one second. Let's see, the briefcase, the Post has learned, contains at least 2 typewritten and signed pages detailing Des Moines Shield's activities while on a mysterious March trip to Europe, from where, according to Dutch journalists, he vanished. In the weeks prior to his death, now ruled a suicide, the 65-year-old former friend and confidant of accused Kennedy assassin Lee Harvey Oswald was covering a crucial, considered a crucial witness in the current probe. The House Select Committee on the Assassination. Staff investigators of the committee began searching the Dallas College professor in early March, following testimony of journalist William Oltmans that Des Moines Shield had shocking confessions in an interview. He had admitted he had prior knowledge to Oswald's plan to kill Kennedy during a Dallas motorcade. Des Moines Shield shot himself. I mean, I don't understand. How would Oltmans know this? Okay, and because Des Moines Shield was in Haiti. Okay, Des Moines Shield wouldn't have known Oswald, wouldn't have even known Kennedy was coming to Dallas. Okay, because he hadn't seen Oswald since June or May, and he wouldn't have known any of this. This is total bullshit. Des Moines Shield shot himself in the head with a 20-gauge shotgun in an oceanfront Malapan mansion of Mrs. Charles Hilton. There she is, right there. The cousin of a former wife of Des Moines Shields. His death came 3 hours after he learned the committee investigated the Gaten Fonzie had traced him to Malapan and had been at the Tilton house. Since his death, Palm Beach County Sheriff's detectives and FBI agents have been trying to untangle the web of mystery. This is April 1st. Wow, this is so tiny, it's so hard to read for me. That's why I'm having difficulty here. Let's see. Get this a little bigger here. Ah, there we go. Intrigued that it's cloaked DeMornshill's activity in recent weeks. Was he a double agent, an accomplice in the murder of the president? Did he have knowledge of the assassination that made him the target of foreign agents determined to silence him? Or was he just a frightened and tired old man looking for his share in the millions made by others because of the Kennedy assassination? Sheriff Lieutenant Richard Sheets, head of the local investigation into DeMornshill's suicide, believes the papers found in the brown leather briefcase are important enough that they should be in the hands of the Assassination Committee, and he firmly refuses to make public their contents. The contents of the letters is something I simply am not going to discuss. He said earlier yesterday, I'm not in a position to evaluate their importance. That's for the committee in Washington to do. For all I know, they could be the key to what everybody has been looking for since the assassination. And frankly, I am more than a little surprised that the committee hasn't contacted me about what we found in the DeMornshill's room. I haven't heard one word from the committee. When informed by the Post Washington Bureau that DeMornshill's papers are being held by Sheets, Robert Tannenbaum, chief investigator of the Kennedy assassination, ordered an aide to fly to West Palm Beach and return the briefcase to Washington. The aide is expected to arrive sometime today. Although Sheets refused to discuss their contents, the Post has learned that two typewritten pages are dated March 11th and were written while DeMornshield was in Brussels. Interesting. But, hold on a second. So, let's see here. So they were written the day and typed the day that DeMornshield left Brussels. Interesting. Somehow they typed him up. Even though he was crazy, he still typed up a complete explanation of something. Anyway. And were written while DeMornshield was in Brussels, Belgium. A source said the letters detail his activities from the time he left Dallas on March 2nd to Amsterdam until he left Brussels on his return to America. The sources said that the letters in part indicate DeMornshield felt threatened by people he was involved in Amsterdam. According to DeMornshield, Dallas attorney Pat Russell, DeMornshield went to Amsterdam with the Altmans to discuss a television story on the tragic effects of the Kennedy assassination on his life. According to Russell, the two men, and possibly a third man identified only as David Russell, no relation to the attorney, arrived in Amsterdam on March 3rd. The attorney said DeMornshill's ticket was paid for by the television company. According to Altmans, DeMornshield, while in Brussels, disappeared on March 5, leaving behind all the clothing and personal belongings and taking only his briefcase and clothes he was wearing. DeMornshill's whereabouts until he turned up in Florida on March 17th is a question Sheets refuses to shed any light on, although claiming, "I know where he was after he disappeared." Since one of the type pages details his activities up to the day he left Brussels, its March 11th date must be the day he began his return to America. The briefcase held by Palm Beach County authorities also contained round-trip air tickets from New York City to London, to Amsterdam, and back to London and New York City, and a boarding pass with the ticket shown. DeMornshield arrived at Kennedy International Airport on March 14th. So it's interesting. Did DeMornshield go? Did he
find a typewriter somewhere or somebody to type this up in Brussels or in London. Very interesting. Brussels believes that Moorenshield, who spent much of his youth in Brussels, was in hiding with friends from the March 5 disappearance and presumed March 11th departure from Brussels. Who was he hiding from? Maybe that Soviet diplomat? I don't think there was mystery behind his disappearance, Russell said. I think he just wanted to get away from Altman's, and that was the only way he could do it. Yeah, maybe he felt he was being used by Altman's. Russell said Altman put the Moorenshield's clothing and personal effects into storage in the Amro Bank in Amsterdam and mailed the deposit ticket to Russell's office. The ticket is dated March 10. The Post has also learned that Moorenshield following his arrival in New York City on March 14th, boarded the bus and came to West Palm Beach. Interesting. Why wouldn't he just fly? Okay, waiting for him in the Tilton home was his 33-year-old daughter, Alexandra, who reportedly arrived there in December. Sources said Miss de Moorenshield made frequent visits to the historic old house and considered Mrs. Tilton the closest thing to a mother she has ever known. On Monday, de Moorenshield met with Edward J. Epstein, a freelance writer, to begin a series of interviews for a book Epstein was writing on Oswald. The two men reportedly had a second meeting on Tuesday, the day Moorenshield killed himself, and were told the final interview on Wednesday. So, de Moorenshield met with Epstein that day and also met with Gaten Fonzie. Interesting. Alright, let's see. The Post has learned Sheets has subpoenaed local telephone company long distance records, if any of de Moorenshield made from the Tilton House. Sheets has also learned yesterday has also placed on hold de Moorenshield's body, a move which has delayed family plans to have the body cremated. That cremation was to have taken place today, reportedly handled by Boynton Beach Funeral Home. I didn't do it because we have any suspicion about the death, as Sheets said. As far as I'm concerned, the victim died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but the investigation isn't complete, and I can't let the body go until it is. Sheets said that there are some questions that he wants to ask the medical examiner and conducted an autopsy, and he won't be available until today. It's nothing serious, Sheets added. I'm sure my questions can easily be answered, and that will end. Then we'll turn over the case to the state attorney's office. Wow, a suicide over the state attorney's office? Interesting. Alright, so we're going to stop there, go into the Moorenshield video, and we'll keep going. Alright, hold on 1 second.
Individuals you met in Minsk. It's factual, but who is interested in Comrade this and Comrade that? And handily bag his pages. As I mentioned before, marital relations between Marina and Lee were not good, and they progressively worsened.
George, excuse me 1 minute. You apparently end here the section on the manuscript.
Yeah.
What did he try to point out in this manuscript on Russia? What would you say was the general tendency?
Just factual experiences of his life as a plain radio worker in Soviet Russia. Nothing sensational, true, correct, relatively kind towards Soviet Russia, but it was not exciting.
Would he talk, for instance, did he have any personal friends?
He talked about a lot of personal friends, whom naturally we did not know, and later on this typescript was shown to me at the Warren Committee, and it was about the same as I had seen it.
Has it been published in the Warren?
So, isn't it interesting that Oswald had lots of friends at his job in Minsk at the radio factory. Matter of fact, he had a really good friend that wanted to learn English and befriended Oswald just for that. I've seen an interview of him. But yet, Oswald is constantly portrayed as this angry loner. And of course, he had no friends among the Americans except for de Moorenshield and maybe Fraser. But even with Fraser, they never did anything together. They never
got a beer afterwards, never talked about anything, just kids and the weather. So it's very strange, don't you think?
Yeah, it is published. It was published.
The text of what he wrote?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Now we're talking again about the marital relation between Lee and Marina. Lee was now working as a photo technician in a firm of Taggart in Dallas, mostly catering to publicity. He worked long hours developing and enlarging photographs, and he seemed to enjoy his work. Sometimes he worked overtime, stayed in the shop till 10 or 11 p.m. Marina complained. He comes home tired, hardly ever talks to me, only to the baby, and begins to read, as always, Russian classics, instead of being tender to me, paying attention to me.
Did you never see Lee read an American book?
Never did.
Or a French or a German?
No, he did not know French or
No,
German.
no, but any of the French classics in English or Latin or American? No Steinbeck, no nothing.
Maybe he did, but I never saw him read anything except Russian books. Maybe he wanted to keep in practice.
Yes. He read them in the original language.
So, you can think of this in two ways. Either Oswald was still, pining about his failed utopia that he didn't find in Russia, but he was still, involved in the classics, the Russian classics, reading in Russian to keep up on his language skills. Or, you can also look at it this way, that he had an assignment to penetrate the Russian white community in Dallas and ferret out, any Confederates that would think, of joining him in the Marxist-Leninist cause and affiliate with him about that. So, you can think of things in one of two ways. He's keeping abreast of Russian classics so he can discuss these things with the other Russians in the community, break bread with them, things like that, and then they can go down that road and he can try to figure out if they're, pro-American or anti-communist or still, pro-socialist, things like that. So it could be part of his assignment, for his legend, you could think of. I mean, because if you think about it, okay, so you went to Russia, you went to the Soviet Union because you thought it was utopia, and then you found out it wasn't good. Why would you keep reading about those things? He's not reading Ginsberg. He's not reading, Huxley. He's not reading Catcher in the Rye, nothing like that. He's not hanging out at socialist commune coffee shops or bookstores in Dallas. So you got to think about these things. And I've learned to look at things, and a lot of people, it's really hard to do this, but to look at things in about 3 different angles or 4 different ways, and then you get a better picture of what's really going on. And then you also have to think about de Mohrenschildt, who's telling the story. He's putting his spin on things too. Okay? So always remember that. Whoever's telling the story, you always have to remember their point of view. Okay? Because people are human, and they're not unbiased, and they're going to put things and spin things the way they see it and the way they want other people to see it.
Excuse me, what did you say, Jan? Oh, you come to it?
Yeah, I come into it. It puzzled us how it was possible that Lee not only spoke fluent Russian, but he also read difficult Russian books. His favorite writers were, of course, Pushkin, Gogol, Turgenev, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy. It is a very difficult language. Lee was bright, but not a genius, and he stayed in Russia only 2 years. Has he had any previous training in Russian language? He must have had, was our conclusion. Being now in a close intimacy.
Bam. So even de Mohrenschildt is not stupid on this sense. Like I said, the way you find out, and this is why the FBI interviews everybody, okay? the FBI will go in and they'll interview your, your neighbors, your landlord, your co-workers, your friends, your relatives, your dog. Well, they won't interview your dog, but the guy who, walks your dog. They'll interview everybody. And then what they get is something called consensus understanding. Okay? And what that consensus of understanding is, everyone knows that you have different relationships with different people. And so they're all going to be biased in the way they see you, or maybe you're going to be biased in the way you treat them. So what the FBI is looking for is general consensus understanding that everyone has of that person. Oh yeah, he was, a nice person. He was studious. He was regimented. He was smart. He was stupid. He was vulgar. All these things. So if you get a consensus understanding that someone is a certain way, then that tends to lead toward the majority of a picture of someone's personality. Because, someone may not like that person, or maybe had a fight with the person, or maybe they sold their girlfriend, or whatever, or sold their job. And so one person may say something bad about someone, but the other people may have a good opinion of that person. So that's consensus understanding right there. That's what the FBI is trying to do. But with the Des Moines Shield here, even Des Moines Shield, like I said, you get a piece of information from all these people, and you put it together, and you can put the puzzle together, what's going on. So even Des Moines Shield says, hey, he was only in Russia 2-3 years, but yet he's reading Russian classics in Russian, conversing very well in Russian, okay, which brought even Des Moines Shield to the observation or conclusion that he must have had some kind of formal Russian training before going to the Soviet Union. Okay? And then the question is when and where and how. Well, I'll tell you how real quick. Oswald, okay, before he was released, was stationed, and we're going to go over all that in this timeline, was supposedly stationed at this Marine Air Base El Toro in Southern California. Well, just north of that, just 5-hour drive or so, where you can take the train, is the Presidio Monterey Language School, DLI, Defense Language Institute, and they have a Russian school there. And I was stationed at Presidio Monterey. I didn't take languages courses or anything like that. I was on post. But my roommate, because they just put us wherever, as enlistment men, wherever there was space available, because there wasn't a lot of housing there. But I was in the section of the Eastern Languages housing unit there. But there was a whole nother unit on the other side of the hill, completely separate from anyone, called the Russian School. Okay? And when you go over there, they have their own dining facilities, they have their own, barracks and stuff like that. And even though these were fairly new, built in the 80s, they had a Russian school there before that they had torn down from like the 1950s. And then they rebuilt the Russian school, completely redone, starting back in the mid-80s. And when you go over there, everyone was speaking Russian. They tried to immerse people into just speaking, don't speak the negative language, they would call it. And the Russian school had the best food, so a lot of times we'd go over there and eat. Okay? And we'd be the only ones speaking English. Everyone else was immersed in trying to practice their Russian. I don't know if they were any good because I didn't understand Russian. Maybe the cashier didn't speak Russian, the cooks didn't speak Russian, but there were signs in Russian. Even, the exit signs were written in Russian. They had English and Russian. The in and out doorways had English and Russian. I believe even the stop sign was written in English and Russian, if I remember correctly, because I remember driving over there. But it was complete Russian immersion, okay? And also had a very, very high burnout rate. I mean, probably 90% of the people that went through the school never made it through the first year, and I believe there was even an additional year for the top students there. Okay. As a matter of fact, a lot of the Russians, you know, even though we would have these, you know, get-togethers during the summer, up on the training field behind the PX, and had a track up there, and we would, you know, it'd be the Army versus the Navy and the Marines and the Air Force and the Coast Guard, and I believe they even had like FBI and Secret Service guys there too, but they were in a different section. But matter of fact, I know they did because they were over at the they have the Naval Postgraduate School over there, and I believe they were housed over there in their housing, which is a lot better than ours. But so even when we were supposed to compete as, you know, units, all the Army versus the Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard, you know, the track, we had track events, running, squad runs, you know, sort of like the Olympics, catapult, stuff like that. The Russians would all sit in a section away from everyone else because we had like Eastern European languages, we had Middle Eastern languages, and Asian languages, and then like Central America was much smaller, you know, Central and South America, or Latin world or something like that. So there was like 4 sections, but we all intermingled with, you know, the Arabic, the Middle Eastern guys, the Asian guys, but the Russians, they wouldn't sit with us. Okay, they didn't, again, negative language. They were taught, you know, to reinforce their language by only commencing talking with themselves. Okay, that's what they did. So if Oswald had already been training in Russian back since the beginning of his days, maybe he was told to, look, when you get out, we're going to have you in a special assignment, or maybe he was coerced, you know, because he kept getting into trouble, that you're going to carry out this assignment and that'll take care of your, you know, problems that you had in the Marines. But even the other people who knew Oswald in the Marines called him Oswaldovich, and they joked about it, and, you know, and things like that. And he got into discussions with them about communism and Marxism and atheism and things like that. So there was a complete separate Russian school that he could have gone to. You know, that's, the DLI has been around since World War II. You know, the Presidio's been there a lot longer, but at least World War II, what I understand, that they have the defense, the DLI there. And so I'm not saying that's what I believe happened. I don't know for sure. I don't have any documents of anything of that happening. But, you know, you can be based out of, this happened many times when I was in the military, because first I was based in Atlanta at Fort McPherson, and we would be based out of McPherson. That's where all our paperwork came out of. But they take us down to, you know, Fort Benning for a week or two to do training. And then we would go to Saudi Arabia on some air base there in the middle of Saudi Arabia, surrounded by, you know, wire, couldn't leave. For weeks at a time. We'd go to Europe on Reforger, you know, for weeks at a time, even though we were based specifically at that base. So you could be based at El Toro, where your paperwork was, your Army file is at, your pay's coming out of there, but you could be anywhere in the country. Okay, they could send you anywhere they wanted to. Okay, and we also got the impression that there were people there, because we never wore uniforms except when we did training exercises at DLI. It was very casual, very, you know, like a campus, college campus. So there were definitely people there that looked a hell of a lot older than 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old in the Russian school. Okay, so there were definitely people that were probably there to train for the CIA or something, or maybe even the FBI. But like I said, Oswald could have got his training in the months prior, because I'm going to go over I'm going to find all the dates, but I know he was at El Toro probably at least 6 months, just sitting there. And, you know, he wasn't in the radar stations, they said. They said he was assigned because he got in trouble to do clerical work or wash cars and shit like that. But anyway, so we'll keep going into this, but again, my whole point is that the Mornshield, even he is detecting that Oswald, there's no way Oswald could have read books in the Marines and then learned enough Russian to get along with the Russians in Russia, and then learned enough Russian to read the books he was reading, you know, and converse with the Mornshield and the type of Russian he was doing. And, you know, and just like we have highly sophisticated, difficult books to read, like Shakespeare and like that aren't like Dr. Seuss, the same thing with Russians. They have different levels of expertise on reading books, and here's Oswald reading the most complicated Russian type of books and understanding and discussing it with de Mornshield, which brings de Mornshield to the conclusion that Oswald was on a different level beyond what they said that he was. Even de Mornshield is detecting this. So again, that brings you to the conclusion that Oswald was trained. He was picked out, trained, you know, in the Russian language, just a smattering. That's all he really needed. He didn't need to be fluent. Sent on assignment to Russia, and this could have been either coerced or it could have been voluntary, or it could have been voluntarily coerced. Okay, you know, you've got these charges against you, and this is going to look bad as a bad discharge. If you go to Russia, we'll give you a decent discharge, you know, an honorable discharge, and this will help you get that, and you're doing a good job for your country. And we're going to send you to the DLI to learn some language skills, and all you got to do is just have fun, do your thing, keep your eyes open, stay out of trouble, and then, you know, come back. And you'll have no problem coming back, because Oswald had no problem getting out of Russia, no problem getting his Russian wife into the United States or out of Russia, and he's given money and his passport back, and he had, you know, 2-3 years before had declared that he was going to betray the United States and give up all his secrets. Anyway. Alright, we're going to move on, and we'll be back at the same thing tomorrow. We'll keep plugging along here and see what we can find. Alright, take care.